On the 5th of June, 2025, everything changed. SETI confirmed a strange repeating signal from deep space, coming from the direction of Kepler 442 billion reals, a potentially habitable planet. But here's the part that shocked scientists worldwide. Just days earlier, 3I, Atlas, an interstellar object, entered our solar system. And now, researchers are asking the unthinkable: did Atlas trigger the message? No explosions, no invasion, just a pattern in the silence. A signal too structured to be random, a phrase decoded from the static. We have watched, we come in cycles. You are not alone, prepare. What follows is a story of leaks, shutdowns, sky flashes, and a silence that speaks louder than any broadcast. If this is real, then we're not just being observed, we've been contacted. Please like and subscribe, because this journey will change how you see our place in the universe. Prepare yourselves. We begin. It started as a whisper, not in the skies, not in the labs, but on the internet. Strange posts on fringe forums, then threads exploding across Twitter, anonymous accounts claiming something massive had just happened. A message from 3I, Atlas. First it sounded like conspiracy, but then SETI stepped in. The whispers weren't just noise anymore. Something had been heard. SETI, the organization that has spent decades scanning the cosmos for signs of life, confirmed it. A narrowband radio signal, clean, repeating, structured, not noise, not interference. Something intentional, coming from the direction of Kepler 442 billion real, a planet that has long haunted astronomers as one of the best candidates for alien life. But now, it wasn't just theory, it was transmission. This signal wasn't random. Its rhythm echoed something more. Experts compared it to Morse code: repetitive, patterned, but beneath the surface, it held layers. Complex modulation, as if the message wasn't just meant to be detected but understood. Like someone out there wasn't just saying hello, they were saying, we know how to talk to you. Then came the live stream. Dr. Lina Romani, one of SETI's leading researchers, stood before the cameras, shaken, measured, but honest. Her voice trembled as she spoke. It is not noise. It is not random. This is different. She didn't say alien. She didn't say intelligent. But her eyes did. The kind of eyes that have seen the data. The kind that knows when the universe is speaking. Then the stream cut. Abruptly. No warning. No follow-up. Just silence. The clip vanished. SETI's website locked down. Livestream archives gone. At first, people thought it was a glitch, a mistake, but hours passed, then days, and that silence? It only grew louder. Meanwhile, the internet kept digging. Forums lit up with archived copies of the audio, signal breakdowns, waveform analysis, amateur spectrograms, encryption attempts. Somewhere in that pulse, people claimed, there was language, a code that broke just enough to say, we have watched, we come in cycles, you are not alone, prepare. It sounded like fiction, but it wasn't just fiction anymore. And through it all, 3I, Atlas kept drifting through our system, quiet, unassuming, but no longer irrelevant. Because if the signal was real, if it came in response to Atlas, then this object wasn't just a visitor, it was a messenger. Something or someone had opened the conversation, and the world was listening. What happens when truth tries to speak, but is smothered mid-sentence? Hours after SETI's historic signal confirmation and the sudden blackout of Dr. Lina Romani's live stream, the world held its breath. Something was wrong. Not because nothing was happening, but because everything had gone quiet. No follow-up statements, no replays. SETI's website returned only error messages. The Allen Telescope live stream, once a constant hum of transparency, was now a blank screen. Just static. Just silence. And in that silence, suspicion bloomed like fire. 2 days later, on the 7th of June, the dam broke. An anonymous user on an encrypted underground forum posted what they claimed was an internal NASA briefing document. At first, it looked like internet theater, another manufactured leak, but then came the data, pages of technical jargon, radio spectrograms, signal compression models, encryption breakdowns, and at the bottom, chillingly simple words, tucked into a segment labeled AI-assisted translation. We have watched. We come in cycles. You are not alone. Prepare. The forums erupted. Reddit threads, Discord groups, Telegram channels. Everyone rushed to verify. Amateur astronomers cross-referenced the leak against known waveforms. Signal analysts tried reconstructing the patterns from saved audio files. Even skeptics began to fall silent. This wasn't random. This wasn't static. This was language. And just like that, the internet caught fire. The story leapt from forums to social media to viral videos overnight. It bypassed the scientific journals entirely. The public didn't wait for peer review. It knew something had slipped through the cracks, something real. But then, as quickly as it rose, it all began to vanish. By the 9th of June, the leaks were disappearing. Links dead, threads deleted, entire accounts banned without warning. Even archived versions were being scrubbed. Some users who tried reposting the data reported IP blocks, platform bans, even direct warnings from moderators they couldn't name. It was as if reality itself was being overwritten. To many, this digital purge confirmed the worst. If it had been a hoax, why erase it? If it was meaningless noise, why silence the ones repeating it? And if this was misinformation, why not confront it with science instead of erasing it completely? Then, on the 11th of June, came the statement. The White House, in a carefully worded press release, acknowledged anomalous readings from deep space, but denied any indication of intelligent origin. The president's press secretary urged the public to avoid misinformation spreading on unofficial platforms. It sounded official. It also sounded terrified. That same day, NASA's Deep Space Network quietly went offline. Scheduled maintenance, they claimed. SETI's data servers went into restricted access. The real-time feeds? Gone. The open-source logs? Archived. The telescopes that once looked outward now stared inward, locked in silence. And still, 3I, Atlas drifted silently across the void, not speaking, not blinking, just there, like an ancient eye watching us fumble through our own fear. It was no longer just about the signal. It was about the reaction to the signal, because the deeper you looked, the more coordinated the silence became, as if the truth hadn't been dismissed. It had been intercepted. But the public wasn't done. The phrase, "we come in cycles," became a kind of mantra, echoed across forums, whispered in podcasts, printed in pixelated meme. It was a riddle, a warning, a promise. And the final word? Prepare. That word kept people awake at night. Prepare for what? Contact? Arrival? Judgment? Or something older, deeper, more cosmic in nature? Something we were never supposed to understand, only acknowledge, something that had already seen us. In every story of first contact, there's a moment when everything becomes undeniable, when doubt collapses under the weight of evidence. For this one, that moment came from a man known only as Jake. He didn't appear on national television. He didn't go through official channels. He emerged quietly, like a shadow pulled into the light. A former systems engineer with verified credentials from JPL Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Before his name could be confirmed, his online profiles were scrubbed, but not before he said one thing that changed everything. The transmission wasn't one way. Earth responded, and they answered back. Until that moment, the signal was incredible, mysterious, a possible first step. But now, it was a conversation. Jake didn't leak documents. He didn't share files. He didn't need to. The weight of his words rippled across the internet like gravity. The world had been focused on the first message. But what if there was more? What if they replied again? He claimed the Earth's scientists had sent a ping back, an acknowledgement, a simple pulse, confirming receipt. And what came after wasn't silence. It was multiple return transmissions. Not just a loop, not noise, not echoes, but frequencies with deliberate structure. Each one carried subtle differences, variations in pulse interval, signal shape, and spectral layering, as if a conversation was unfolding not in words but in logic, in rhythm, in the language of science itself. And when Jake was asked, "What do these messages mean?" he gave the only answer that truly mattered. "It's not a threat, it's an invitation." An invitation. The word landed like thunder. Not attack, not warning, not conquest, but something that demanded a choice, something that asked us to step forward rather than retreat. Still, the mainstream didn't bite. News networks stayed silent. Articles that tried to cover the story were mysteriously pulled. Podcasts vanished from feeds. Interviews with independent astronomers were taken down without explanation. Even Neil deGrasse Tyson, who briefly posted that first contact may not be cinematic but strangely ordinary, deleted his comment within hours. It was like the world had agreed to forget. But memory, once ignited, doesn't fade so easily, because the first message we have watched was no longer isolated. It had become part of something larger, a chain, a structure, a bridge between silence and understanding. And the most haunting part? That phrase, "we come in cycles." What did it mean? Were they returning? Had they been here before? Was Atlas simply the latest cycle of many, each one quietly observed from afar, each one marked by a whisper we failed to hear? Those 4 phrases we have watched, "we come in cycles," "you are not alone," "prepare," formed a loop that played endlessly in people's minds, a mantra, a warning, a map. Not everyone agreed on its meaning. Some believed it was a message of peace, a cosmic handshake offered across the stars. Others saw it as a countdown, a declaration, a signal that something was approaching, not slowly, but with precision. And then came the flashes. Amateur astronomers from Chile, Japan, and Canada began reporting synchronized bursts of light from the direction of Kepler, 442 billion reals. Bright, clean, repeating. 3 flashes, then 6, then 3 again, the same sequence, occurring every 19 hours. It wasn't random, it wasn't natural, it wasn't ignorable, it was visual communication, as if the message was moving beyond audio, beyond our technology, into something simpler, something we could see with our own eyes. Because the truth is, sound can be erased, words can be deleted, but light is harder to hide. With each pulse, the message grew louder. "We have watched. We come in cycles. You are not alone. Prepare, prepare." That word again. It's not a threat. It's an invitation. And now the question isn't just, what does it mean? The question is, what do we do with it? Not every conspiracy is born from paranoia. Some are born from precision, from the cold, calculated rhythm of doors closing one by one. On the 11th of June, 2025, NASA's Deep Space Network, the heartbeat of our planet's long-distance ears, went offline. No warning, no countdown, just a quiet post about scheduled maintenance. At the same time, SETI's servers locked down. The Allen Telescope Array, once broadcasting live streams around the clock, replaced its feed with a generic error screen. It felt like the sky had gone blind, and still no one would say why. The official line from the White House called the signal an anomaly, a natural occurrence, harmless, no reason for concern. But the timing was too exact, the coordination too tight. To the public, this wasn't damage control, it was information quarantine. Because if the signal was meaningless, why shut off the tools? Why silence the sky? The more they tried to control the narrative, the more it slipped through their fingers. Screenshots of Jake's statements resurfaced on encrypted forums. People compared telescope logs and found matching pulse intervals from multiple observatories. Data analysis was no longer just for scientists. Coders, musicians, mathematicians all turned their focus to a single question. What are they hiding? And still, the 4 phrases echoed. "We have watched. We come in cycles. You are not alone. Prepare." The internet responded the only way it could, by fracturing. Grassroots networks formed. Files were shared through anonymous nodes. Skywatchers built DIY rigs, aiming old antennas and modified cameras at the stars. When light flashed from Kepler, 442 billion reals. They saw it. When the pattern repeated 363, they counted it, verified it, shared it again, and one truth became painfully clear. The signal hadn't stopped. Only our access to it had. Governments refused to comment. SETI issued no further updates. Journalists who tried to dig deeper reported strange roadblocks, emails undelivered, interviewees retracting, even legal threats for publishing sensitive content. And all the while, 3I, Atlas continued its silent drift through our solar system, a cold rock by all appearances. No propulsion, no beacon, just presence. And that was enough, because this time, the silence wasn't just suspicious, it was strategic. Every locked server, every vanished video, every shut-down telescope, it was the sound of institutions choking on a truth too vast to control. The people noticed. They always do. They noticed the media blackout. They noticed the carefully worded denials. They noticed the timing of each shutdown synchronized like the ticking of a clock leading somewhere. What should have been the most celebrated discovery in modern history had turned into a ghost story, one not denied outright, but one made to disappear. And yet it persisted. In every light pulse caught by a backyard lens, in every reposted frame of leaked spectrograms, in every whispered prepare beneath viral videos now deleted. Because once the universe speaks to you, you cannot unhear it. A new kind of timeline was forming. One not written by journalists or scientists, but by ordinary people connecting the dots in real time. The 5th of June. The signal is confirmed. The 7th of June. The leak surfaces. The 9th of June. The data vanishes. June 11th. Governments go dark. The 15th of June. The sky begins to flash, and behind all of it, a question no official would answer. Why now? Why 3I, Atlas? Why Keppel 442 billion reals? Why prepare? The silence wasn't just an absence of noise. It was a message. It was the message, because when the ones tasked with telling the truth choose silence, the world hears something else. It hears fear. It started with a ping, a simple, narrow-band reply sent back into the stars. Not a full sentence, not a declaration, just a pulse, a handshake, the cosmic equivalent of, "We hear you." Most people didn't know it happened. There were no press briefings, no headlines, but deep within one of NASA's off-network facilities, a reply was crafted and transmitted toward Keppel 442 billion reals. Not by politicians, not by the public, but by a small, silent group of scientists still stunned by what they'd received, but unwilling to leave the mystery unanswered. And against all odds, the void answered, not once, not randomly, multiple responses, transmitted across different frequencies, each one layered with a complexity that defied natural origin. They weren't echoes, they weren't errors, they were intelligent. Each signal bore the same structural rhythm, but now there were changes, subtle distortions in pulse intervals, harmonic overlays encoded in time gaps, frequency shifts that implied variation. Not random noise, intentional complexity. The message was evolving, and so was the fear. Because once you send a signal out into the dark, you lose control over what answers. And now, something was actively responding. Scientists scrambled to decode the new layers. AI-assisted translators began to isolate pattern clusters, code stacks resembling logic gates, recursive sequencing, even linguistic framing. Nothing concrete, nothing you could translate word for word. But the structure was clear. This wasn't a warning. It wasn't a threat. It was an invitation. An invitation to what? That question split the scientific community. Some believed it was an open hand, a moment of galactic diplomacy. Others saw danger, that even peaceful communication could be a trap. But either way, the reality was the same. We were in conversation now, and the world refused to speak of it. Podcasts disappeared. Interviews were pulled. Prominent researchers who hinted at the second signal retracted their comments, went silent, or vanished from digital spaces entirely. One by one, voices dropped from the chorus, but the public didn't stop listening. They built back the story themselves. Archived logs, signal comparisons, side-by-side breakdowns of known transmissions and the new ones. Entire communities formed online teams of coders, signal analysts, and linguists trying to build a bridge from pulses and pauses to meaning. And what they found wasn't just confirmation, it was personality. The second round of transmissions weren't just data, they were distinct, varying, reactive, like they were listening to us, like they were adjusting. And in that adjustment, something terrifyingly beautiful emerged, a pattern of response that seemed to reflect us. Our signal changed, and theirs did too. We added noise, they cleaned it. We shortened the interval, they answered faster, like a mirror, waiting for us to look deeper. For the first time in human history, we weren't just asking if we were alone, we were not alone, and we knew it not through a spaceship, not through a declaration, but through a conversation made of logic, frequency, and time. And all the while, 3I, Atlas drifted silently across our sky like a forgotten messenger, a carrier that delivered something more profound than any landing ever could. It delivered contact without spectacle, without noise, just truth humming beneath the silence. But the world, unprepared, turned away. The institutions locked their gates. The headlines shifted back to politics. The servers stayed dark, and yet, out in the void, something waits, still responding, still adjusting, still watching, and the invitation remains. Not a threat, not a promise, just a possibility. Prepare. The word wasn't just part of a message anymore. It had become a choice. The 15th of June, 2025. Night falls over the mountains of Chile. Amateur astronomer Luis Ortega points his lens toward the familiar coordinates of Keppel, 442 billion reals, just as he's done for years. But this night is different, because tonight the sky pulses. 3 flashes, pause, 6 flashes, pause, 3 again. Then, nothing. 19 hours later, it happens again. Luis isn't alone. Across the Pacific, a sky-watching group in Japan reports identical flashes, same timing, same intervals. In Canada, a retired physicist turned stargazer captures it on camera. Same sequence, same direction. 3, 6, 3. It's not a comet, not a flare, not a supernova. It's language. But this time, spoken not in radio but in light. In a universe governed by silence, this was a scream. It was as if the cosmos had grown tired of speaking in signals too easy to erase. Now it was speaking with photons, directly into the lenses of ordinary people, bypassing the satellites, the servers, the gatekeepers. This message wasn't for scientists anymore. It was for all of us. And that changed everything. People around the world began scanning the sky. The 363 pattern became a global obsession. Open source forums filled with time-stamped recordings, discussions of Morse logic, hypotheses linking it to human DNA sequences. 1,000 theories collided, but one truth emerged. This was deliberate, because these were not natural bursts, not from stars, not from collapsing systems or pulsing neutron hearts. They were too uniform, too isolated, too timed. They weren't just signals, they were responses. But to what? To our reply? To Atlas? To the thousands of eyes now pointed at Keppel, 442 billion reals? Or were they answering something even older, a question humanity has been asking since it looked up at the stars? Are we alone? The flashes didn't bring answers. They brought presence. They said, "We see you watching." They said, "We haven't stopped listening." They said, "Yes." But still, silence reigned among institutions. No statement from NASA, no press conference from SETI, no acknowledgement from observatories that once chased every unusual blip. Mainstream scientists asked about the flashes, dismissed them as coincidence, atmospheric distortion, observer error, a trick of reflection perhaps. But the people who had recorded them knew better, because the flashes weren't random. They came on schedule, always in the same sequence, always from the same place, like a cosmic heartbeat, like the universe tapping on the glass. And they weren't just seen in observatories anymore. They were being filmed from rooftops, from mountains, from airplane windows, dozens of videos, different angles, all confirming the same terrifyingly beautiful truth. The stars were blinking back, And beneath each frame, the old phrases echoed louder. We have watched. We come in cycles. You are not alone. Prepare. That final word, prepare, now felt different. It wasn't just intellectual. It was visceral. Prepare, not for invasion. Prepare, not for salvation, but for something much harder. Prepare to understand. Prepare to let go. Prepare to become aware. The flashes forced humanity to confront something terrifying, not just the existence of something out there, but its patience, its calm, its control. We weren't dealing with beings rushing to announce themselves with fire and noise. We were dealing with something that waited, that chose its moments with mathematical precision, and that now, after cycles unknown, had begun to speak in rhythm and light, not by accident, but by design. And 3i, Atlas, it kept moving, silent, unchanged. But now, no one saw it the same way. It wasn't just a visitor, it was part of a clock, and the flashes were the chime. Prepare. The message said it plainly. No metaphors, no riddles, just the word, placed at the end of a chain, like the final breath of a prophecy. We have watched. We come in cycles. You are not alone. Prepare. But prepare for what? A question that now echoed louder than the message itself. That single word, stripped of context, became the heart of every thread, every theory, every private conversation whispered between friends who couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. Some said it meant arrival, that an intelligence long orbiting in silence was preparing to step forward, to cross the threshold between observation and contact. And not just contact, return. A cosmic reappearance from watchers who have come before and will come again. Others argued it was a test, that Earth's response was being measured, that the patience, silence, and coordination shown in the signals wasn't benign, it was a calibration, a way of identifying civilizations ready to speak the language of stars. The signal may have simply said, "Are you conscious enough to know we are here?" And then there were those who saw invitation, not invasion, not warning, but a door. A quiet offer to step beyond our fears and into something greater. An opening into what could be humanity's greatest transformation, not in technology, but in awareness. Prepare to know, prepare to listen, prepare to evolve. In ancient times, messages came from burning bushes, from thunder in the clouds. Now, they arrive in pulses and flashes, in electromagnetic whispers and structured light. But the message has never really changed. It says, you are not the center, but you are not forgotten. And it is this shift, this flipping of the existential mirror, that rattled people the most. Because to prepare doesn't just mean to expect something external. It means to change something internal. It means readiness, not for war, but for truth. A kind of truth we may not be equipped to hold. Think about it. If we've been watched for centuries, for cycles, then what do they know about us, about what we are, about what we're capable of, about what we're still blind to? What if the message isn't warning us of them? What if it's warning us about ourselves? Because to receive a signal like this and then do nothing, to bury it, to erase it, to call it fiction, is the most human response of all. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the true test is not in whether we decode their language, but whether we're ready to stop lying to ourselves. Because they didn't say run, they didn't say fear, they said prepare, as if they already know how the story plays out, as if they've seen it 1,000 times before. Civilizations that reach too far, too fast, who split atoms before they master empathy, who build signals strong enough to reach the stars, but not strong enough to understand what answers. Cycles, watching, waiting. And maybe we're not the first planet to be told to prepare. Maybe we're just the latest in a long chain of watchers and watched. A moment in a repeating loop, caught between awareness and extinction. So what do we do with that? Do we turn away? Or do we meet the moment with the gravity it deserves? Because the message may have been for Earth, but the question is for each of us. What would it mean truly to prepare? Not our governments, not our satellites, us. Would it mean re-evaluating how we see time, life, consciousness? Would it mean letting go of our cosmic arrogance? Would it mean finally accepting that being watched doesn't mean we're special? It means we're seen. And in that seeing, we are known for our chaos, our violence, our brilliance, our potential. So prepare may not be a warning at all. It may be a grace, a gift from something ancient enough to wait, patient enough to whisper, and kind enough to repeat. Because now the question isn't just what we're being prepared for. The real question is, will we listen? It appeared in silence, just beyond the airplane window. At first, the passenger thought it was a trick of light, a cloud formation, a strange alignment of shadows. But as the plane continued its steady course over Colombia, he realized something wasn't right. The clouds were drifting, the sky was clear, and this thing wasn't moving. It stood still, towering, 4 massive arms, each piercing through the layers of clouds like pillars holding up an invisible cathedral. It wasn't faint, it wasn't blurry, it was there. So he did what anyone would do. He reached for his phone and began to film. The video would later ripple across the internet, first posted to a small niche forum before being picked up by countless others. The reaction? Shock, awe, disbelief, accusation. Everything you'd expect when the veil thins for a moment and the unknown shows its face. Some said it was a mountain, but the plane was flying at a high cruising altitude, well above the local terrain. The passenger insisted he knew the route Bogotá to Medellin. He'd flown it dozens of times. He knew what was below, and this was not a mountain. Others claimed it was an illusion, a rare meteorological formation, a cloud shaped by pressure and wind. But meteorologists couldn't explain the symmetry, the arms, the vertical lift, the way light refracted around it. It looked mechanical, organic, designed. To some, it was just a shape. To others, it was a sign, because it didn't just appear anywhere. It appeared during the exact same week that the 3I Atlas transmissions were silenced. During the same month, the sky began to flash, as if whatever was behind the signal had decided to show a shadow of itself, not with sound or light, but with form, an apparition in the sky, not threatening, not destructive, but unsettling in its stillness, its deliberate presence. What terrified people most was that it didn't do anything. It just stood there, as if watching. And for some, that was more disturbing than if it had moved, because stillness means intent, stillness means awareness. Some described it as a forearm-like structure. Others likened it to a massive instrument, an antenna rising from the clouds to meet something we couldn't see. But no matter the interpretation, one truth settled into every viewer's mind like dust in water. We are not alone up here. People began comparing it to ancient myths, the Watchers, the gods who lived in the sky, the beings who only revealed themselves when a cycle restarted. The echoes of prepare came flooding back now, not just in light or signal, but in shadow. Still, skeptics dug in. Optical illusion, terrain confusion, overactive imaginations. But they couldn't explain one thing, the pattern, because reports of similar sightings began surfacing elsewhere. Different altitudes, different continents, always the same shape, always the same eerie stillness above the clouds, always the same silence. And that silence was now beginning to feel familiar, just like the silence after the SETI livestream, just like the silence after the second signal, just like the silence before something shifts. To those paying attention, the apparition was a message in a different language, not audio, not visual, but psychological, a language of presence. It didn't say we are coming, it said we are already here, and perhaps we always were. In ancient times, humans looked to the clouds for signs from gods. Today, we look to them for signs from others, and what we saw changed something, not just in the sky, but in us. The moment you realize the sky is watching back, really watching, you don't look at clouds the same way. You don't look at silence the same way, because everything suddenly feels curated, arranged, seen. And in that seeing, a new kind of fear emerges, not the fear of invasion, the fear of acknowledgement, that we are visible, measurable, catalogued, and that whatever is out there, whatever sent the signal, blink the lights, and pierce the clouds is no longer asking for our attention. It already has it. There's a strange comfort in believing you're being watched by the stars. It's easy to imagine contact coming from afar, a distant world, a radio pulse, a blinking light. But what if the watchers weren't light years away? What if they've been above us this entire time, not in deep space, in our skis? For decades, pilots have whispered stories, military crews, commercial captains, even astronauts. They spoke of craft that defied gravity, objects with no wings, no exhaust, no sound, just motion swift, precise, impossible. Some stayed silent out of fear. Others reported what they saw and were told it was nothing. But the stories kept coming. And now, with the 3I Atlas message still unraveling, those stories no longer feel like isolated curiosities. They feel like chapters in a much longer book. Because in the weeks following the sky flashes and the cloud apparition, something else spiked UFO reports near commercial aircraft. Sightings described objects pacing with planes, holding formation, hovering just long enough to be seen, then vanishing. Not fleeing, just leaving. In one incident, a pilot on a routine flight over the Pacific described an object that appeared 10,000 feet above, glowing faintly, then accelerating to the horizon in under a second. No sonic boom, no heat trail, just presence, and then absence. Radar picked up nothing. The co-pilot saw it too, and when they reported it, they were told to file a standard atmospheric anomaly report, same as always. These aren't just stories anymore. In 2004, the Tic Tac incident off the California coast involved elite Navy pilots chasing an object that broke every known law of flight. It dropped from 80,000 feet to sea level in less than a second. It hovered. It vanished. It was recorded on infrared. Multiple sources, multiple angles, but still no answers. And now, those incidents are being viewed in a new light. Because if Atlas didn't bring the message, maybe it only reminded us of it. Maybe the real visitors were already here, hovering above, watching, waiting, measuring our readiness not with invasions but with observation. And not just from the stars, but from the very sky we live under. The more you look, the more the patterns emerge. Unidentified craft near nuclear sites, near test ranges, near spaceports, and especially near planes. Why planes? Some believe they're drawn to our technology. That aircraft represent humanity's highest achievement in motion and control. Others think they're studying our behavior in motion, how we react, adapt, solve under pressure. In planes, humans are vulnerable, suspended between ground and sky. Maybe that's the point. To study not our machines, but us, how we respond to fear, to awe, to the unknown pressing its face against the glass of our reality. Some say these objects are probes. Some say they're drones. Some say they're observers from another realm, folding into our airspace just long enough to take notes. But now, after the signal, after the lights, after the clouds, the idea that these are isolated sightings feels childish. What if they never left? What if the first contact we're waiting for already happened? Not with speeches or landings, but with presence, with silent movements and unrecorded data, with decisions made not by us, but about us. The Pentagon has declassified dozens of reports, confirming what was once conspiracy is now reality. Unknown craft, advanced motion, non-human origin suspected. And still, the public doesn't know what to make of it. Because deep down, the most terrifying possibility isn't that these objects are alien. It's that they're familiar, that they've been part of our history, our mythology, our gods, our demands, our watchers, and that only now are we connecting the dots. Not because they finally showed themselves, but because we finally opened our eyes. And what we're seeing is not conquest, not contact, but confirmation. They've always been here, watching the skies, watching us, waiting for something. They've crossed distances we can barely comprehend. They've moved through the sky like thought. They've answered signals we didn't know we sent, but they haven't landed, they haven't spoken, they haven't claimed anything. So the question remains, why are they watching us? If they possess technology that bends physics, crafts that outrun fighter jets, intelligence that translates our signals in hours, why not reveal themselves? Maybe the answer isn't about them at all. Maybe it's about us. Because planes aren't just machines. They are mirrors, moving symbols of our evolution. They carry our dreams, our diplomacy, our business, our wars, and inside them, a microcosm of humanity, diverse, vulnerable, unaware. So what better vantage point could there be? What better way to observe a species in motion? They watch how we move across borders. They watch how we handle fear midair. They watch how we respond to turbulence, to silence, to emergency. Because those moments reveal who we really are. Not when we're posing for the camera, but when we're bare, uncertain, alive. Some believe the watchers, whatever or whoever they are, study us the way we study wildlife. From a distance, minimal interference, just enough proximity to understand the patterns, not the politics, not the borders, just behavior. And maybe that's the test. Not, are you advanced enough? But, are you aware enough? Are we aware of how we treat each other in cramped metal tubes across the sky? Aware of how we divide, how we fear, how we hope? Because it's not just about propulsion or power. They may already know our weapons, our languages, our science. What they may not understand is our soul, and that's why they're still watching, to see if we're capable of kindness in altitude, of calm under chaos, of grace when the oxygen masks fall. It's possible they've contacted countless civilizations before us, each met with signals, silence, or destruction. Maybe they've learned to wait. Maybe they've learned to watch for patterns, not politics, cycles, behavior, readiness. And maybe that's why they reached out through light instead of ships. Why they answered our ping with a mirror, not a monologue. Because this contact was never about grand arrivals. It was about subtle awakenings, of realization, of remembering, of recognition. They see how we deny what we fear, how we bury what we don't understand, how we censor truth with silence. And yet, despite all that, they haven't given up on us. They've watched us from above, from the stars, from behind clouds, from the corners of history we call myth. They've come in cycles. And now, maybe, the next one is beginning, not because we're ready, but because it's time, and the final whisper is no longer prepare. It's this: we've given you everything you need to see us. The signal, the light, the reflection in your own sky. Now the question is no longer who we are, it's who you're going to become.